Okay, let's dive right in. We all know how critical certain roles are today, and right up there, especially now, is the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO.
Absolutely. They're managing threats, making sure compliance is handled, developing the whole security strategy. It's a huge job.
It really is, but here's the question that maybe keeps some boards awake at night. What happens when that CISO leaves, that key person?
Right. That exact moment, whether it's planned or completely out of the blue, it just, throws a spotlight on a potential major vulnerability.
And it brings up this whole idea of CISO succession planning. It's not just general planning, is it? It feels very specific.
It has to be. Given the pressures, the direct link to, business survival sometimes, it's really non-negotiable. It's about resilience.
Exactly. And that's what we're focusing on today in this deep dive. We've gathered a bunch of material articles, some deep research reports, things looking at talent retention across cybersecurity, skills gaps, even an agenda from a CISO executive summit.
A good mix.
Yeah. And our mission is to kind of sift through all this and pull out the really crucial takeaways for you. What do you need to know about keeping that leadership continuity and building security teams that can actually withstand change?
Well, starting with the why. Why is this CISO planning so important? The sources are really clear. It ties directly into fundamental business operations. Like business continuity, obviously. Protecting the cybersecurity posture day to day. And making sure the organization can actually handle a crisis if or maybe when it hits.
So it's much more than just an HR checklist item.
Oh, definitely. It's about being ready for change so you don't get caught flat-footed. A good plan means security doesn't just, fall off a cliff when the leader changes. It's proactive risk management.
Okay, and speaking of risk, here's a number from the sources that really jumped out at me. It seems low. Only 25% of companies surveyed actually have a comprehensive succession plan specifically for their CISO.
It's a quarter.
That leaves, 75% basically unprepared if their CISO walks out tomorrow. That feels like a massive gamble.
It is. It points to a pretty big gap in governance, in risk management across the board. And the upside of getting this right, of being in that 25% or joining them, is huge.
What are the specific benefits?
Well, leadership stability, obviously. Preserving all that crucial institutional knowledge. The history, the context, the relationships the CISO has built. It makes crisis management smoother because the lines of authority are clear. It definitely boosts stakeholder confidence, the board, investors, customers seeing that you're planning ahead. And fundamentally, it supports the long-term security strategy. It keeps things on track.
Okay, the why is clear, especially with that startling 25% figure. So let's talk about the what. What actually goes into an effective CISO succession plan, according to these sources? It's not just picking a name, right?
Not at all. It's a structured process. It really starts with systematically identifying who your potential successors even are.
How do you do that?
You look beyond just seniority. You need a real assessment of their skills, their experience, sure, but also critically, their management style, their leadership potential. Okay.
And that links directly to skills and competency mapping. You need to know what skills the CISO role demands now and what it might need in the future as threats change. Then you map potential candidates against that.
So you identify the people, map the skills, and then presumably you find gaps.
Exactly. Which leads straight into targeted development and training programs. This has to include things like mentorship, giving candidates exposure to the strategic level, formal leadership training too.
Makes sense.
And one thing the sources really stress is having an emergency plan ready for sudden departures. Like who steps in immediately, even temporarily, so there's no vacuum.
Right, like an interim CISO.
Precisely. Some organizations are creating specific deputy CISO roles for this very reason. It builds in redundancy, helps with ongoing knowledge transfer. It's a practical step.
Having that designated number 2 seems smart. So you've got the components. What are the best practices for actually implementing this plan, making it work? Key practices. Well, first, the plan can't just sit on a shelf. It needs regular review annually or whenever big changes happen in the business or the threat landscape.
Keep it current.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Second, you have to get the board and senior leadership involved. This isn't just an IT thing. It's governance. You need their buy-in, their resources.
Needs to align with the overall business strategy.
Yes, integrated totally with business strategy and the main continuity plans. Transparency is also key. People need to know the plan exists, what the criteria are. That builds trust.
Okay.
Then there's structured performance evaluation and feedback for those potential successors. You need to track their progress.
Are there tools or tech to help manage all this?
Yeah, leveraging HR systems or even specific cybersecurity management platforms can help streamline things. Another big one, scenario planning, running simulations. Test the plan. Does it actually hold up under pressure?
Oh, like a fire drill for leadership change.
Kind of, yeah. Establishing a dedicated committee can help keep focus. And a really major one, documentation and knowledge archiving. You need a system, like a central knowledge repository, to capture that CISO's institutional memory for the next person.
That sounds crucial, but maybe hard to do consistently.
It takes discipline. And finally, fostering a culture of continuous improvement within the whole security team helps build that pipeline naturally over time.
That point about culture and the wire team, it connects to another big theme in the sources, doesn't it? The broader challenge of just keeping cybersecurity talent, period, not just the CISO.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge issue, and it makes the CISO succession problem even harder. We're facing a massive talent shortage globally.
How massive?
Well, CyberSeek data for 2024 showed nearly 457,000 unfilled cyber jobs just in the U.S. That's a staggering number. A huge structural gap.
Wow. And I guess high turnover just makes that gap even worse.
It pours fuel on the fire. High turnover means recruitment costs, sure, but also operational drag, knowledge walking out the door, and directly increased security risks.
Is there data linking turnover to risks?
Yes. An IBM report, which the NIST sources mentioned, found a direct link. Breached organizations reported worse staffing shortages and significantly higher breach costs. We're talking an average of $3.86 million higher.
Okay, so losing staff literally costs millions more when things go wrong. That really underscores the importance of retention. Why are people leaving these jobs?
Several key drivers kept coming up. Number one, probably stress and burnout. It's intense.
Well, I can only imagine.
A Black Fog report found a quarter of CISOs and IT security decision makers are thinking about quitting specifically because of overwhelming stress. They talked about impossible workloads, the long hours, feeling isolated, unrealistic expectations.
And the pressure must be immense, especially after an incident.
It is. And then there's another layer of stress pressure to keep breaches quiet. A Bitdefender report found, get this, 71% of security pros said they'd been told to keep quiet about incident details.
71%. That puts them in a terrible position legally and ethically.
Exactly. Puts them at personal risk. And beyond that, the NIST report highlighted a lack of clear career progression and unsupportive work cultures as major reasons people start looking elsewhere.
So it's this mix of high pressure, potential ethical conflicts, and maybe feeling like you're stuck or not valued.
That seems to be the picture. And when you dig into the employee perspectives in that NIST report, you see some interesting details.
Like what? Did managers and staff see things differently?
Somewhat. Managers tended to pinpoint lack of competitive pay and limited career opportunities as the main reasons people leave, from their viewpoint.
Okay, makes sense from a management perspective. What about the individual contributors themselves, the folks on the front lines?
Well, they agreed on wanting more advancement opportunities, better pay, and investment in their learning. Those were top priorities for increasing job satisfaction. But they also really emphasized things impacting their day-to-day work life.
Such as
things like wanting more flexible work arrangements, needing clear communication from leadership, valuing mentorship, and just having the right tools and resources to actually do the job well.
So it's not just about the future promotion, but also about how sustainable and supportive the job feels right now.
Precisely. And here's a really interesting nuance. Many employees in that survey actually said they felt satisfied with their career progression overall.
Oh, that seems contradictory.
It does. But then, when asked what would increase their satisfaction, they listed more advancement opportunities and more structured programs. It suggests that maybe satisfied doesn't mean actively engaged in staying. Organizations might misunderstand that. People might be okay, but they see room for improvement and want employers who are proactive about their growth.
That makes a lot of sense. Being okay isn't the same as being motivated to stay long term. What about those burnout comments you mentioned? What did people actually say?
The direct quotes were quite revealing. Phrases like being expected to do more with less, frustration over lack of adequate funding, feeling swamped by too many projects, dealing with competing demands.
Sounds familiar in many fields, but maybe amplified here.
It seems so. Some comments were really stark. People saying they literally had to switch jobs to recover from the stress levels. Just couldn't sustain it.
Wow. Leaving just to physically or mentally recover? That's a serious indictment.
It is. Now, to be balanced, the sources did include views from people who felt less overwhelmed or who sort of accepted stress as part of the territory. But even for them, the consensus was that having support mechanisms like real flexibility, protected time off after a big push, these things are critical for long-term health and preventing total burnout.
There was another study mentioned too, right, about mental health?
Yes, the Tyne study, cited in the NIST report, specifically highlighted the mental health toll. Many reported a decline, and some even mentioned relying on medication just to cope with the job stress.
Tackling all of this, from CISO, succession, to retention, burnout, career paths, it clearly takes resources. Resources for people, for programs, for leaders trying to figure this out. And that's why we're really grateful for the support that allows us to do deep dives like this one.
Absolutely. We want to take a moment here to thank our sponsors. A big thank you to www.securitycareers.help. They're focused on supporting those clear pathways for growth and helping tackle that critical talent gap we've been discussing.
Yes, thank you. And also a huge thank you to www.cisomarketplace.com. They provide really valuable resources and support specifically for CISOs and other security leaders who are navigating all these complex challenges daily. Your support truly makes these conversations possible.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the problems, the challenges. Let's pivot to solutions. What actionable strategies did the sources recommend for organizations that want to actually keep their cybersecurity talent?
Well, good news is the strategies link directly back to the problems we identified. First up, and maybe most important based on that employee feedback, career development.
Making those paths real. Exactly. Providing clear, visible career paths. Setting up structured training programs, and really importantly, mentorship programs. ISC2 data highlighted how vital mentorship is, especially for people new to cyber or switching careers.
And learning opportunities.
Crucial, giving people regular access to certifications, training, and importantly, time to actually do that learning during work hours. That fights stagnation, helps prevent burnout. Think about apprenticeship programs, too. The data shows they have great retention rates. It's about structured investment in people.
So investing in their skills is a direct retention strategy. What's next?
Second is the organizational culture and psychological safety. You have to intentionally build a positive culture, one that values innovation, yes, but also collaboration and genuine engagement.
How does that connect to retention?
Well, research from groups like YCCS shows that feeling excluded or working in a negative culture drives people away. In psychological safety, that feeling that you can speak up, admit a mistake, report a concern without getting punished, that's absolutely fundamental.
For reporting issues, you mean?
For reporting, for learning, for everything. It fosters open communication. Building strong peer networks helps too, providing that mutual support. But leadership is key here. Leaders have to actively model and foster this supportive culture, challenge old ways that don't work, and actually listen and respond to feedback. Deloitte's research points this out too.
Culture comes from the top, and people need to feel safe. Got it. What's the third area?
Third is directly tackling work-life balance and burnout prevention. We heard how burnout is a top reason people leave, so organizations need to actively promote balance.
How? Flexible work.
That's a big part of it. Offering and truly supporting flexible arrangements, like remote or hybrid work, flexible hours. The SHRM report backs this up, but it's also about actively managing workloads, setting realistic expectations and establishing clear boundaries, especially around after-hours work.
Easier said than done sometimes?
It takes discipline, especially from leadership. They have to set the example. They need to check in on people's well-being. Regular check-ins, maybe leadership training focused on emotional intelligence or EQ so managers can better support their teams. And offering anonymous feedback channels like Gallup suggests can empower employees to raise concerns.
Okay, development, culture, balance. Now let's loop back specifically to CISO succession. Knowledge transfer seems like a huge piece of making that transition smooth. How do the sources address KT?
Knowledge transfer, KT. Yeah, it's vital for succession, but also just for team resilience overall. The sources usually talk about two types of knowledge, tacit and explicit.
Tacit is the how-to, the experience stuff.
Exactly. The intuition, the context, the stuff that's hard to just write down in a manual.
Yeah.
Explicit knowledge is the stuff that is documented, procedures, reports, data.
And tacit is the harder part to transfer when someone leaves.
Definitely. It's often the most valuable, too. The sources generally outline 4 stages for KT. Identifying what knowledge is critical, capturing it somehow, sharing it with the right people, and making sure it's actually applied or used.
So how do you actually capture and share that tricky tacit knowledge?
Strategies include developing a formal KT plan, using mentorship and job shadowing extensively, leveraging knowledge management systems. Those repositories we mentioned, fostering a culture where sharing is encouraged, and using methods suited for tacit knowledge. Think storytelling, recording explanations, hands-on practice.
This sounds like where Steve Troutman's work, which was cited, comes in strongly, focusing on the manager's role.
Precisely. Troutman's core argument is that tools and processes matter, but the direct manager is the absolute key to making KT happen. They have the authority to set priorities, clear roadblocks, and crucially, ensure accountability. Without the manager driving it, KT often just fizzles out.
What specifically does Troutman say managers need to do?
He lists several key actions. Managers need to make sure their team understands the big picture. Questions how their work connects to strategy. They need to provide input for risk analysis, like identifying knowledge silos, maybe using a tool like his knowledge silo matrix.
Okay.
They have to actively carve out and protect time for C. KT, he suggests, maybe 10% of the week. Ensure people have the basic tools they need, the air, food, water. Prioritize which skills are most critical to transfer using things like skill development plans.
And accountability.
Huge. Tying KT progress to performance reviews. Managers also need to actively overcome resistance people might have to sharing their knowledge, and they need to track progress through regular status reports. Essentially, the manager is the one who makes KT a requirement, not just a suggestion.
It's really clear hearing all this that these aren't just theoretical ideas floating around. Looking at that Philadelphia CISO Executive Summit agenda you mentioned earlier, these are the exact topics top CISOs are actively wrestling with.
Yeah, that agenda was a great real-world check.
Mm-hmm.
It had sessions explicitly on C-suite success and succession, right there, but also sessions on AI, compliance, third-party risk, cybersecurity culture, strategic budgeting, leadership strategies.
So it confirms that CISOs are deeply engaged in building teams, planning for the future, managing the human elements just as much as the technical threats.
Exactly. It shows that these issues, succession, retention, culture, knowledge transfer, are understood at the highest levels as being fundamental to building a resilient security function. They're not side issues. They're core to success.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up, bringing our deep dive to a close.
I think the main takeaways are pretty clear. CISO succession planning isn't just a nice to have. It's a specific critical need for any organization that wants to be resilient.
And that specific need sits inside this much bigger landscape of cybersecurity talent retention challenges, a really tough environment driven by things like burnout, the need for real career growth, and the impact of workplace culture.
Right. And tackling these issues effectively isn't about quick fixes. It demands deliberate, structured approaches. You need to focus on career development, build that supportive and psychologically safe culture, actively manage work-life balance, and ensure knowledge is transferred effectively.
And leadership at all levels seems absolutely crucial, from the CISO setting the tone down to the direct manager making KT happen.
Couldn't agree more. Leadership is the thread running through all of it.
We really want to thank our sponsors one last time for helping us bring this important conversation to you.
Yes, thank you again to www.securitycareers.help for their commitment to supporting cybersecurity professionals' growth and helping organizations find the talent they need.
And thank you again to www.cisomarketplace.com for being such a valuable resource hub for CISOs and security leaders facing these very real challenges every day. Your support is incredibly appreciated.
So, as a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on after this, consider this. What if the single most effective, most resilient long-term security strategy isn't just about buying the next piece of tech, but about making a deep, sustained investment in the well-being, the development, and the future of all your cybersecurity people?